Well, tonight there is a new Trump defense: bravado. Bravado is a Spanish word which in current American English usage means boasting, exaggerating, which in legal terms means lying. So the new Trump defense tonight is "I was lying." On this program, we pledge to bring to you, as soon as it is available, as we have already done, every word of Donald Trump's defense in the case of United States of America versus Donald J. Trump, in which Donald Trump stands accused of 37 counts of violating federal law, including the Espionage Act, in his illegal possession of government documents, including highly classified documents. Today, Donald Trump answered questions about the 2-minute audio recording that flooded cable news last night, including this program. The audio recording seems to reveal Donald Trump holding up and showing a classified document of multiple pages that contained the American military's theoretical war plan against Iran. Now, the Pentagon regularly maintains and updates theoretical war plans against actually most countries in the world. And most of those war plans have no chance of ever being carried out. But all of them are highly classified. We're going to play that audio recording of Donald Trump apparently discussing the Iran war plans and showing the plans to people not authorized to see classified information. We will play those 2 minutes for you again tonight in their entirety. But before that, we want to deliver every word of Donald Trump's defense against what you will hear once again in that audio recording. Donald Trump's latest defense, delivered this evening in a discussion with reporters on his campaign plane, is that he was not holding up and showing the Pentagon's war plan against Iran. Donald Trump said tonight, "I would say it was bravado. If you want to know the truth, it was bravado. I was talking and just holding up papers and talking about them, but I had no documents. I didn't have any documents." So Donald Trump's newest defense for what you are about to hear on this recording, when it sounds like he is showing the Iran war plan in specificity, including multiple pages of it, to the people around him, is, "I was lying. I did not have the Iran war plan with me. I did not have the Iran war plan in my hands. I was just bragging about it." In other words, the Trump defense is he was lying about the papers that you can hear him shuffling and handling on the audio recording. Semaphore is reporting that in the discussions with reporters on his plane, Donald Trump said, "I just held up a whole pile of, my desk is loaded up with papers. I have papers from 25 different things." At one point, Trump gestured to the seat next to him on the plane where a stack of various papers, newspapers, copies of his speech, printouts of articles, sat. He grabbed some from the pile and placed them in front of him, moving them around as he spoke and offering up a physical reenactment of what he said was occurring on the audio tape. If Donald Trump takes the witness stand in his own defense, he will be invited by Special Prosecutor Jack Smith to perform that physical reenactment on the witness stand. When reporters asked Donald Trump about his use of the word plan, Donald Trump said, "Did I use the word plans? What I'm referring to is magazines, newspapers, plans of buildings. I had plans of buildings, building plans. I had plans of a golf course. I didn't have a classified document. There was no classified document on my desk." When Donald Trump was asked if the revelation on the audio recording would affect whether he considers a plea deal, Donald Trump replied, "Frankly, that you even ask a question like that, like that's a disgrace. So let's end it." And that was the end of Donald Trump's defense on his campaign plan. Earlier today, a Fox Digital reporter asked Donald Trump if he was concerned about the audio recording, to which Donald Trump replied, "My voice was fine." which is not really what prosecutors are going to be focusing on. Here is Donald Trump's response to that question about being possibly concerned about the audio recording.
My voice was fine. What did I say wrong in those recordings? I didn't even see the recording. All I know is I did nothing wrong. We had a lot of papers stacked up. In fact, you could hear the rustle of the paper.
Yes, we do. We hear the rustling of the paper. You are about to hear the rustle of that paper again when we play you the full 2 minutes, and you will hear Donald Trump apparently showing classified documents to people saying, these are the papers. Who you now want you to believe that those papers were building plans. You will hear Donald Trump rustling papers, and you will hear the people with him react to what he is showing to them, with one person saying she really believes him now. Believes what? That he's showing her building plans? Donald Trump, in his interview with Fox Digital today, said something that every mafia kingpin used to say. It's a phrase we've never heard from someone who wasn't guilty of very serious crimes. The mafia version of the phrase was always, I'm a legitimate businessman. That's what every big gangster and murderer like Al Capone always said. Here was Donald Trump's version of his 21st century gangster defense.
I don't do things wrong. I do things right. I'm a legitimate person.
I'm a legitimate person. That is almost word for word what Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, Raymond Patriarca, Gennaro Angiulo, John Gotti, and other mob bosses said when they were accused of crimes, which they all committed. The New York Times is reporting tonight that one of the voices you will hear on the 2-minute audio recording is Trump staffer Liz Harrington. The Times is also reporting that Margot Martin is another Trump staffer who was present for the discussion you are about to hear. Also present was the ghostwriter and publisher of Mark Meadows' fake memoir of serving as Donald Trump's fourth and final White House chief of staff. As you listen once again, with Donald Trump's newest lines of defense in mind, to the 2-minute audio recording, listen for the bravado. Listen for the possibility that he's just lying about the papers that he is playing with and not showing to the people he is speaking to. When Donald Trump says, they presented me this is off the record, but they presented me this, think about what this could be. Building plans? When Donald Trump says, it is like highly confidential, and everyone laughs, and then he says, this is secret information, what are those people looking at when Donald Trump says this is secret information? Building plans? When you hear Donald Trump say, he said he wanted to attack Iran, and then said, these are the papers, this was done by the military, given to me, what is Donald Trump showing them that was done by the military and given to him? Building plans for a golf course? Donald Trump has known about this audio recording since the day that the recording was made. He's known about it for 2 years. And in the 24 hours since we've known about it, the latest defense that Donald Trump has been able to come up with is, I was lying. I didn't have an Iran attack plan in my hands when I claimed I did. That's it. That's the best he has. Here then, once again, with the new defense in mind, is the newly released audio recording of Donald Trump that has already been cited as an exhibit in the federal criminal indictment of Donald Trump.
These are bad, sick people.
That was your coup, you know, against you.
Well, it started right at the
like
beginning.
when Milley's talking about, oh, you were going to try to do a coup. No, they were trying to do that before you even were sworn in.
That's right.
Trying to overthrow your election.
Well, with Milley, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack Iran. Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look. This was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him.
Wow.
We looked at some. This was him. This wasn't done by me. This was him. All sorts of stuff. It's pages long. Look. Wait a minute. Let's see here. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I just found, isn't that amazing? This totally wins my case, you know. Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information. But look at this. You attack, and
Hillary would print that out all the time, you know.
she'd send
Private
it,
email.
she'd send it to
Yeah.
Anthony Weiner, the pervert.
Please print.
By the way, isn't that incredible? though?
Yeah.
I was just saying, because we were talking about it. And he said he wanted to attack Iran and what? These are the
You did.
papers.
It's pretty.
This was done by the military, given to me. I think we can probably, right?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to
Declassify.
figure out
it.
yeah.
See, as president, I could have declassified
Yeah.
it. Now I can't, you know, but this is
Yeah,
classified.
now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's so cool. I mean, it's so, look, we here I have, and you probably almost didn't believe me, but now you believe me.
No, I believe
It's
you.
incredible, right?
No,
Hey, bring some Cokes in, please.